Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. We're out here in my big shop today. I'm actually working on this picnic table. You can probably see part of the top of it. I'm actually planing it down because the board's kind of got a little wonky, and we're trying to fix this up for our property, our new property, the 100 acres that I'm trying to develop into a homestead. And you know, every night when I go to bed or when I wake up in the morning, oftentimes the last thought in my mind and the first thought in my mind when I wake up is, I wonder what the New World Order is up to today. What kind of stuff is the WEF and the UN and the Trilateral Commission and all these other groups, what are they up to today? What kind of stuff, what kind of Orwellian, dystopian future are they trying to put us into today? So last night, and I could barely sleep after I saw this article that ought to make every single American, especially because we're such an automobile culture, it ought to make every single American go, hey, whoa, wait a minute, stop the truck. We're not doing this. We're not down for this. But instead, that probably isn't going to happen. It's probably going to be like incrementalism, you know, done through incrementalism like everything else they do. So I just wanted to share this with you because this is very alarming and very Orwellian. I mean, it's just unbelievable the stuff that's going on from day to day. It's hard for me to pick out just one or two stories to cover because there are so many things right now that are just being done intentionally out in the open to take away our liberty and our freedom and our ability to travel freely. So let's get into this headline here. The WEF, the World Economic Forum, wants to eliminate ownership of private vehicles. I mean, that right there ought to send you into just a whole day worth of research. Don't take my word for this stuff. Don't, never take anyone's word for it. Go do your own research, and I will provide the link to the story, the article that I'm referring to in this video here. But I mean, guys, this is real stuff. They've been talking about this for a while now. Now they're coming right out in the forefront and saying it right where everyone can see it. The WEF wants to eliminate, not reduce, not restrict, eliminate ownership of private vehicles. That's a huge deal. So what they want you to do is use rideshare and services like Uber and Lyft and things like that. And you'll just use your cell phone, see? And you'll just call somebody and they'll come give you a ride. It plays into the you will own nothing and you will be happy or you will like it or whatever that evil guy Klaus Schwab said. I mean, he's like a bad James Bond villain that was too unbelievable to put into the James Bond movie. This guy is just over the top Dr. fucking evil. I mean, this is bad news, guys. This Klaus Schwab guy, every time he opens his mouth, it's restrictions and control and an attack on your sovereignty, your liberty to do the things you want to do, travel the places you want to go travel. I mean, that's one of the beauties of the United States of America is if you're in a state that you don't like, or maybe things aren't going the way that you want them to go, or maybe you have relatives in another state, you can just jump in your car and go there. And of course, since dictator Biden came in, the gas prices have tripled and quadrupled in some places. So that's a limiting factor right there. I haven't been able to go and see my family or anything like that. We've been cutting our traveling down just because I don't want to pay the $4, $5 a gallon gas to go someplace, especially since I have, most of the stuff I have are trucks and things like that. Now I do have motorcycles, and we're going to make a video about that. About how to keep your freedom as long as possible, and that's having motorcycles. So that'll help you, not to use so much fuel. You'll still be able to travel places now. You're restricted on what you can carry and things like that. But yeah, Klaus Schwab, the WEF, they're calling for an outright elimination or a ban on private ownership of vehicles. This is a huge freaking deal. I mean, it reminds me of Minority Report. If you've seen the old movie, Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, one of the most dystopian scenes I've ever seen in any movie is when Tom Cruise is trying to get away from the authorities. They have accused him of a pre-crime. If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, it's an old movie. I don't think anyone has to worry about that, but if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a pretty good show. It shows you a lot of these things that the WEF have been working on. I think it's kind of a beta test when they do a lot of these predictive programming shows like Minority Report. It's a beta test to see how people respond to that sort of thing. Well, one of the most powerful scenes to me that stood out in my mind was when Tom Cruise's character is trying to get away from the authorities. They're accusing him of a pre-crime, and he jumps into one of these fully automated, 100% self-driving vehicles. And somehow he gets the thing to turn on, and he's going down the road, and it's going up and down, sideways. It's a pretty wild scene, right? Well, suddenly the officials take control of the vehicle and shut it down. And I don't remember exactly, it's been a while. I'm gonna have to go watch that movie again. It's been a while since I've seen that scene. But I remember that basically thinking to myself, oh my God, this is the danger of having fully autonomous or just vehicles with kill switches in them. And of course, if you've been following the channel, I did a whole video about, I don't know, a year ago now, about Biden's plan to put kill switches in all the vehicles made after the year 2024. So every vehicle, every new vehicle you buy, whether that be electric or gas or any of that other stuff, it will have a kill switch inside of it. And I also mentioned in another video here previously that during the grid problems down in Texas, they were having some problems not being able to, supply enough energy to everyone because of their antiquated systems haven't been, it's really not that. It's because the EPA has come in and said you can't produce energy until you use this solar stuff first and this wind stuff first. You can't use your old traditional proven methods like coal and natural gas and things like that. So they basically tied their hands. So now all of a sudden there's new people coming into the scene buying electric vehicles and things like that, and that's putting more and more of a demand on the already weak energy grid system, right? Well, down in Texas, the Teslas suddenly started telling people a little message that, oh, don't charge your Tesla between like 2 and 8 p.m. because that's peak hours and you might actually hurt the power grid if you do that stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable how Orwellian this technology has already become. I mean, the fact is, 10 years ago now, me and other people were telling you that these devices right here were monitoring and tracking your every move. And they denied it. They said, oh no, that would never happen. Why? What are you worried about? You got nothing. I mean, if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to hide, right? No, it's called my own privacy and my own right to not be freaking monitored by someone that I didn't give permission to monitor me. That's what it's about. We ought to all go and take these things and smash them to bits. That's what we ought to do. And not allow them to track us. Of course, then that would make you look like some sort of a scofflaw or something. You'd be viewed as some sort of an outlaw just for not having a cell phone these days. Well, that's how it's going to be in the future with vehicles. And I saw an article here recently. I'm not going to be able to reference it as precisely as this one here, but I saw an article recently, and it was all about how the automobile culture here in the United States has been intentionally killed over the years. And if you think about it, I mean, think about the beautiful lines on the cars from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. And then near the 80s, they started getting more and more boxy and squared off, and they just weren't, there were still a few gems in the lot. I happen to like the square body Chevy pickup trucks, the C10s and stuff like that from the 80s. There's a few other cars that were rear wheel drive, usually V8 cars like Cutlasses and Monte Carlos and things like that. Even some of the Camaros were pretty cool. But now look around. I mean, those cars, the cool looking cars that are out there today are almost unobtainable for people on a regular budget, regular normal folks. So what they end up driving are these cars that look just like every other car. They're uninspiring. No one is ever going to write a song about their Prius and how much gas they saved. I mean, it's unfreaking believable what has happened to the automobile culture over the past, like 20 or so years or whatever, maybe even longer than that. I remember when I was in high school back in the 90s, it wasn't everyone, but there was probably about, there's probably about 30 or 40 classic cars out in the parking lot, and we had a kind of a clique of guys that would go around. We'd talk to each other about what kind of camshaft and what kind of, what kind of performance it does, what kind of quarter mile time it runs, 0 to 60 times, different things like that. And that is, I guess there are still these people that fix up the ricers and make them sound like a fart can or whatever, the real, you hear them every now and then. But even that, it's not as prevalent as it was for the youth when I was a kid. I mean, again, at least 30 or 40 classic cars, Camaros, Mustangs, Novas, you name it. I had the 72 Monte Carlo, and I still have that car. I love it so much. I've kept it all these years, and one of these days, I keep saying, one of these days I'm going to fix it up. And that day is coming sooner and sooner. And the reason why is because that car has 0 computer chips in it. None. Nothing. Nada, zip. And I want to keep it that way. As tempting as it is to go ahead and put an LS in it or something and turn it into some, supercar with a fuel injection that would probably get better fuel mileage, I don't dare do that, because a computer chip, not only could it be turned off by someone else, it could be hacked into, it could be hit with a solar flare or a EMP. We're in this serious threat right now of being nuked by Russia. And they would probably use EMPs as one of their primary tools to knock our power grid down. So if I had an old car like that, or an old square body that didn't have any computer chips or anything in it, then I'm going to have a better chance of being able to go out there and crank that ignition and get that thing to fire up. That gives me freedom. Even though it costs me more to drive that vehicle per mile because it doesn't get as good a fuel mileage, it's not about that in a car like that. It's about smiles per gallon, not miles per gallon. But that culture seems to be dying, or on its last leg, or almost dead. I mean, it's just unbelievable when I look around at the compare and contrast between the way it was when I was a kid in the 90s and the way it is now. I mean, this one's kind of close to home here, but I'm going to tell the story anyways, because I think it's important. When I was a kid, weeks before, in fact, I think I went out and got my driver's permit before I was even 16 years old, because I was so adamant about driving. I understood what driving was. It was a type of freedom. It was freedom from my mom and dad's house, and I could go out and start doing whatever, hanging out with my friends, going cruising, doing a little drag racing, whatever. I could do those things. I could go back and forth to school. I could go back and forth to work. I realized the importance of that freedom, and it truly is a freedom. And also, it kind of depends on where you are. If that, public transit and public transportation stuff is going to work out for you, and things like Uber and Lyft. If you live in a place like I live, our city is very spread out. So it doesn't make sense for public transit here. Public transit makes sense in a place like New York City, where everything's real close together, right? And you already have the infrastructure in place with the subways and things like that. But these other cities, like where I live near, there is no advantage to doing any of this public transit. And oftentimes the streetcars that they do have are driven around completely empty. No one's even riding on them. But yet they push this stuff, and they provide federal money so that they'll promote this stuff. It's sort of like a monorail. I remember there was a Simpsons episode years ago about the guy coming to town to sell the monorail and how great it was going to be. And of course, it was a complete disaster. No one used it. That's sort of what this modern stuff is. This modern transportation plan, it reminds me of the monorail ideas from the Simpsons. It's a scam. These people are coming to scam you. And what are they scamming you out of? They're scamming you not only out of your money, your freedom. Your freedom to travel. It's super important, guys. So they want to control travel, restrict and eliminate access to rural land. So as I said earlier, I have 100 acres we're trying to develop into a homestead. Well, part of the UN Agenda 2030 and 2021 plan is to rewild the United States. They called it that. I didn't make that word up. They called it that. Rewilding the United States. And what does that mean? It means moving everyone, whether you want to or not, into a smart city, smart grid, where you're inside. In my opinion, I think you'll be inside the loop or the beltway that surrounds most major cities. You'll be crammed into one of these super cities, and you'll live in a skyscraper, and everybody will have about the same amount of space, and you'll own nothing, so you won't have to have a whole lot of space for storage or anything like that. It'll just be living space and sleeping space, probably a bathroom space, things like that. You won't cook anything. Everything you'll do will be brought to you. And the most important question that no one ever answers is, who's going to be profiting from all of this rental stuff that we're supposedly going to be shifting into? Somebody on the top somewhere is going to be holding their hand out and taking that money for, when you rent silverware and plates or whatever, and someone else has to clean them when they take them away, or when you order an Uber or a Lyft or something. So where does that money come from? A lot of the jobs that we have out there now are producing products that are in the system right now. So when suddenly those products are no longer needed or being produced by people because there's some sort of a universal basic income and no one has any desire to go out and do any work, I don't get this plan. I don't get it at all, unless it's, I do get it. That's selling myself short. I do get it. It's to destroy capitalism. It's to destroy the United States of America, the one nation that's stopping this entire floodgate from being just open, wide open, and ripping down everyone's throat is the USA. And of course, we got this guy in there, Sleepy Joe, Dementia Joe, China Joe, who's doing everything in his power to help usher this crap in. So, you know, they claim it's for the environment. They claim it's to help the environment, right? The reason they're doing all this stuff is to reduce, you know, emissions and all this stuff, your carbon footprint or whatever the hell they want to call it from day to day. But really what it's always been about is control. It's about controlling you, getting you like a cow, like cattle, like a piece of livestock in a city somewhere where you'll come and go, you'll be monitored, everything. I mean, it's straight out of Orwell's book, 1984. I won't doubt it one bit if, you know, Lord God, Klaus Schwab doesn't come on your TV screen real close up in a real scary picture. I mean, or V for Vendetta, it reminds me of that as well. These people are maniacal, evil supervillains. And I believe, when I said evil, I believe they are in league with Satan. Maybe they don't know it, but they are in league with Satan. So this plays into the Agenda 2030, as I said. It's the plan to rewild the USA. And what I was going to talk about a moment ago is people like me. You know, I've got 100 acres out there. You know, what about other farmers and stuff that have to go out there and drive tractors and stuff? These things don't run on fairy dust or liberal tears, unfortunately. It runs on diesel. So what are these farmers going to do when they can't produce anymore, or they can't even access their land because maybe the Uber or Lyft driver eventually says, oh, no, that's out of my range. I don't go that far. You see what I'm saying, guys? This is all being laid out here to control us. Like livestock. That's the best analogy I can give. They want to control us and treat us like livestock. They will control how often we're allowed to breed and or reproduce. Maybe you'll be able to breed all you want, but you won't be able to reproduce unless the WEF or the UN says it's okay for you to do that. I mean, it's like a combination of Minority Report and Gattaca and 1984 and, you know, just so many other dystopian books and movies that were written, in my opinion, either to prepare us for what's coming or to warn us against what's coming. Either way, the American people are so lost and drunk on their, you know, comfort and drunk on, you know, sports and, you know, celebrity gossip and so who's getting married to who, you know, this, that, or the other, you know. It's just unfreaking believable that we're in this time right now. And this is a crash landing, guys. We're in a plane or the Titanic, you know, we've hit the iceberg. A lot of people in the media are sitting there sawing on the violin, playing the drums, you know, pretending like nothing's happening. You and I, people that are paying attention, know this is a world ender. This is a freedom ender. This ends the sovereignty, the Constitution, everything good about the United States ends with this doctrine. If the UN gets the chance to pass everything that they have in their 2030 agenda, and the WEF is right there alongside of them with the Great Reset. In fact, I heard a story last night. I haven't been able to confirm this yet, but supposedly the WEF and the UN are basically one organization now. They have combined forces. And if that's the case, that is super scary. I mean, it's like two evil supervillains suddenly, you know, holding hands. And now, you know, it's like Russia and China teaming up or something really horrible like that, right? It's happening, guys. The last story here kind of confirms what I've been talking about. So I don't know if you've seen this or not. The mainstream media has been talking about this like it's a wonderful thing. But I saw a news article on the Gateway Pundit here earlier before I made this video. Saudi Arabia unveils plan for dystopian linear city, and it's going to have 9 million people in a giant 109-mile long mirrored wall. So, you know, of course, Saudi Arabia, they've got all our money because we've been sending them all this money for oil, and we could have been producing it here and putting people to work here. But instead, Biden's going over there and begging them for more oil and stuff like that. And Saudi Arabia, because they have the oil, I mean, they can kind of pick and choose what to do right now. They've got us by the short hairs. It's not good. You never want to have people like that have you by the short hairs, but they do, thanks to Biden. You know, if you remember, under Trump, we actually achieved energy independence for the first time in decades and decades. It was amazing. He said he was going to do it. He did it. And then Biden immediately undid every single thing, every accomplishment that gave us energy independence and cheap $2 or less gas. Biden undid all of that. And because, the WEF has actually said, they published a paper that said gas prices must increase. And that was already after they were $5 a gallon. So these people will tell you exactly what they're doing if you take time to read between the lines. They don't always say it in the first sentence. You have to kind of listen to a bunch of their other garbage. And it's usually started out with a whole bunch of fluff about saving the environment and all this stuff. But anytime you hear them say that, just know it in your heart, know it in your mind. It's all about controlling you and me. It's about taking away our freedom, taking away our ability to travel freely, putting us in one of these Saudi Arabia style smart cities, smart grids, where you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, not this old boy. They ain't going to work that way. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America and my right, my God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. None of this stuff makes me happy. Traveling in my old 72 Monte Carlo and doing burnouts makes me happy. Screw you, Klaus Schwab. You're not taking my land. You're not taking my ability to travel. And I hope that everyone else listening to this video will say and feel and do and practice the same thing. Do not let them take your ability to travel freely. If you do, you're a slave. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry it's always so hard hitting like this, but man, that's the way it is. When you live in a dystopian nightmare, somebody has to come out and say it. So I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to get back to planing this. I'm going to take out some of my rage against the WEF on planing this table here, and hopefully that'll calm me down a little bit. But yeah, I'm fired up, guys. You should be too. I stand for liberty. I hope you do too. We'll see you next time.